Hey, friend, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and on today's Draft Therapy session, I'm talking to my neighbor to the north, Kevin DeGrood. North Center Brewing's been serving brews for over 5 years to the community of Northville. Located within walking distance of downtown, no night in the city would be complete without either starting or finishing at North Center. Kevin DeGrood is the founder and now managing officer of North Center Brewing. Kevin, welcome to the session.
Glad to be here.
Had a little bit of a snafu, but that's all right. So I have to know, I always start with the most important and serious of questions. What's your number one go-to karaoke song?
For me, I got two. Am I allowed?
Two.
Yeah, I got two. Well, the wagon wheel's not far, so I have good practice. But Fire, or This One Goes Out to the One I Love by REM, and also um, just about anything by The Doors, but specifically LA Woman.
All
Are two
right.
songs.
Yeah, those aren't too bad. Not too bad to picks. Other people can sing along with you in the place, so
Yeah.
that's not too bad. Always get some audience participation. So, what is your background? How did you get involved in beer? Was it something that, played a part of your life early on, or was it something that you came into later on, or how did that whole thing start?
Sure. Well, I graduated with a bachelor's in chemical engineering from University of Detroit Mercy, and that's kind of where it started. We actually had one of our lab classes. We had we made beer in the lab, and that was probably my first taste, quite literally, of beer. I think I was only 18 or 19 years old, but the professor definitely had a passion for it and got me interested. Um, and Subsequently, towards the end of my college career, and then getting into when I graduated, which was way back in '04, I started dabbling in the home brewing, and it got more serious in about 2008, 2009, where I took it from a sort of hobby to brewing multiple nights a week. I took a big leap, and eventually, yeah, just the growing it from just a bunch of buddies getting together to we're doing weddings and grad parties, and we had inventory, and it was like, well, we're kind of running a brewery out of your house. Talking about my buddy at the time, and we said, why don't we try this out? So yeah, the brewing started for me back in college. So that's where I got my first taste.
So it was something where you had just had this home brewing hobby. It kind of became a little bit of a business, and you just decided from there to grow it into an actual brewery.
Yeah, we, like I said, we were kind of brewing quite a bit, especially, I feel like most home brewers, it's a hobby. Maybe you do it once a month, or, at most, or a couple times a year. We were brewing very often, and this the conversation eventually came up because we would, like I mentioned, we kind of did weddings and grad parties, and sometimes you're serving to people who don't know you, and when you're getting, um, eh, you know, they're telling you they like your product, and things like that from people that you don't know. That's when we thought, well, maybe we should look into it, and that conversation started in early 2011 is when we first started the discussion of, well, why don't we research this and see what it takes, and kind of snowballed from there. So from the time we started our initial discussion to opening, just over 4 years. So we, we definitely did not take our time.
So for you guys, why did you pick Northville? Are you local to Northville? Did you grow up in that area, or what was the thing about Northville that drew you, to opening a brewery in the city itself or in the township?
Sure. Yeah, we it all came down to our business model at the time. So I am from here locally. I grew up in Wixom, so not far away. I live in Livonia now, and uh, what we were looking for when we wrote up our business model was, um, we like the fact that there, well, at least at the time, wasn't any other breweries kind of immediate to us. Northville has a walking downtown, like a an actual downtown, unlike some neighboring cities. We also investigated like Livonia at the time. Again, Livonia doesn't have a natural downtown. So for us, it was the appeal of having the walking downtown, plus not having a ton of competition in the immediate area. Again, at the time, and then um, also it doesn't hurt that it's an affluent neighborhood. So from a business model standpoint, we thought that was a good landing point. Um, and so we decided to try that out, not knowing that 2015 was apparently the year to open up a brewery. It was the cool thing to do at the time. So where we went from, I mean, immediately the closest ones at the time to us were Witch's Hat, South Lyon, Liberty Street, Plymouth. And outside of that, there was nobody else really. Farmington Brewing was fairly new. And then all of a sudden, you had us, Ascension, Drafting Table, Draft Horse, Dearborn Brewing, Canton Brew Works, all kind of like within the 12 months of each other. So, um, Northville has been a great community, and I'm glad we chose where we chose. But yeah, we definitely got a lot of competition real quick.
Yeah, you mentioned 2015, and that's what I thought immediately when you said that. It was you guys, like you said, Ascension, Canton Brew Works. Now we have Arbor Brew, so places have even kind of popped up since then. And Livonia has multiple now where they have. I know
Yep.
they have Supernatural, but they have others in the works. So it seems like just a matter of time before one turns into three, turns into six, turns into the sky's the limit. It seems like it seems like it's really exploding, and it's slowed down a little bit, but we're still seeing more breweries come on board. So when you picked Northville, how easy was it to work with the city to get all your permits, all that stuff? Was that much of a hassle, or was it something that you found easy to kind of work with them to do?
Well, they're easy to work with in general. I think what was the difficulty is knowing which permits I even needed to get. Making sure you know who you talk to and the right people. And again, rewind 6, 7 years ago when I started these discussions with the city. At the time, a brewery was still a new concept almost to a lot of municipalities. So even the microbrewers license in the state of Michigan was a newer thing at the time, and they were easy to work with, but they just didn't know the answers to a lot of questions. For us, what ended up being the biggest roadblock to opening was actually parking. As in every municipality, parking is a premium, especially when you have a concentrated downtown. And our parking lot that's in the rear of our building was 4 spots shy of what it needed to be to have our brewery in it. So it took about 10 months on paper to get to loan spots from other adjacent properties and things like that. It took finagling our operating hours to fall on this agreement that we had for parking spaces. So it was that was a pain in the butt, but it wasn't. The city was willing to work with me, and the landlord. It's just it took lot longer to figure out than my pocketbooks really liked. But in general, they've been good to work with, and definitely since we've opened, the city's been great. Um, there was just so many things that were unknown at the time that it took a lot longer than we anticipated for sure.
And one thing about Northville, especially how downtown Northville's situated, there's a couple main drags, but then where you guys are just north, just I mean literally a few steps out of north, out of the downtown, there's residential area right behind you guys. How have the neighbors been? I know with other places that have opened, it's been a bit of a nuisance to have, or I would think it would be a bit of a nuisance, to have a brewery around. But how have your neighbors been, your residential neighbors?
Yeah, initially it was definitely an issue. The initial city council meetings when they were announcing our location and things like that, um, definitely made me nervous that the surrounding neighbors would embrace us. Um, I would say, you would have thought at the time that I was opening a prison or a strip club, and it was it wasn't well received, but it was what I later found out, it was a small amount of people making a lot of noise. And now that we've been here and established, the neighbors are great. The neighbors are the ones who come into the bar the most. And I think in our coming up on 6 years, we've had maybe two noise complaints, just in general, and then nothing outside of that. We haven't had any MLCC violations. We haven't had any issues with cars driving into houses or anything like that. It's been a relatively good relationship. I'm sure if you ask them, sometimes we start brewing at 6 in the morning, and you're unloading a pallet or something that might not be so pleasant. But in general, I think the neighborhood has really embraced us, and we've embraced them for sure. So at first, I thought it was going to be a rocky relationship, but not really any issues since then.
Yeah, and at that point, you don't really need to worry about parking, right? If they live right nearby, you can just walk there, walk back. No issues with the police, and
Right,
it's all good.
right.
So when
So
you
when you
started off
started
at
off
the
at the
brewery, were you the primary brewer at the time?
Yeah, it was myself and another one of our investors who was one of my home brewing buddies. Um, both of us have pretty much stepped away from the brewing now. That was more of a variable, having a day job still, and just not being able to keep up with demand. Even at first we're like, well, we'll just brew on the weekends, whatever, and that quickly became difficult to keep up with demand. Our brewery is not big by any means, but having a full brew house, you can really start to crank through some liquid. So, um, we realized really quickly, I'd say within the first 6 months, that we definitely needed help. Which we morphed our current head brewer, Dakota. She's been brewing at NCB basically since the end of 2015, and I stepped aside as uh, uh, a brewer probably 2 years into our program, and took more of a role of making sure all of the brewery was in a good spot. So, um, for me, that's the toughest part, and that's what they tell you when you're gonna grow a business is, usually you like, whatever part of the business that you have a background in, that's the part you're gonna have the hardest to let go when you're running it. I still get my hands dirty from time to time, but definitely I do miss the fact that I'm not the one kicking on the boiler at 6 in the morning to get the system up and running. But I can join in when I need to, and have some fun. But yeah, now I have a couple of brewers that run the show, and I still obviously have a heavy hand in what we brew, but they're the ones that are doing the work.
Yeah, that was one thing you mentioned about kind of thinking that you could brew on the weekends and be able to keep up. And that's when I talked to Jeff Smith from Loaded Dice, and that was one of the things that I didn't even think of, was that you're constantly, they're only open 5 days a week or something like that, and it's limited hours. But even at that, having a smaller brew house like they have, he's constantly brewing. So that, I mean, I wouldn't even think, I would be on the same page as you when you start off, oh yeah, I can do this on the weekend. But then you start to think, like, how much are you going to be able to actually brew on the weekend compared to how much you're going to go through? And the other thing that I found, I was kind of looking through your website and doing my research, digging through the places that the limited places I could dig through. And the thing that I thought was really interesting about you guys is that you do have a female head brewer, and that's not really all that common, unfortunately. So that was, I'm sure it was nice to kind of be able to foster somebody out, somebody inside that you didn't have to bring in, and was unfamiliar with your product.
Yep. Um, yeah, and that was, it wasn't even something that really crossed our mind. Is at the time, at the time it was, we need someone in here that can help us. And I don't care what bathroom you walk into. It was just, you have a passion for the product. You're reliable. You're smart. You can, you know, you're quick at learning. All those things are what check the box. And yeah, it's, here we are again, almost 6 years later, and it's still an uncommon thing. which is it's unfortunate, and it's one of the things that our small brewery, we don't have a ton of influence, but we try to do what we can. We're actually hosting this Saturday a brewing basics for women class, and it's not that we had someone comment on the event feed that said, um, what do women brew differently? And I was not that I'm aware of, but in a male dominated industry, it's good to get some exposure to people who maybe didn't think about it. And so, this of course was driven by our female head brewer, and and trying to generate interest and things like that. So it's definitely something that we'd like to change. Diversity is a great thing, especially it as much fun as the beer industry has been, and it's been a great welcoming industry. It is a room full of white dudes with beards, like no question. And I mean, look at us, here, and so it'll be good to get to continue trying to change the culture that this can be for anyone, but a lot of times it's not necessarily even about people that it's getting them knowledgeable or excited about something, and so that's what we're trying to do in our small little area. So maybe in another 6 or 7 years, it'll be a more common thing to have some female brewers in and around.
That's and I also just even going into tap rooms. I mean, obviously, haven't been going into many tap rooms within the last year or so, but that was always a thing. My thing is when I go into a brewery, I like to, if I'm by myself, which I generally am, I like to just sit at the bar, and you don't see it's been gaining traction, but you would see a lot of white dudes with beards sitting around the bar or at the tables, unless it was a guy, somebody on a date. But you didn't see a lot of women in the breweries and going to places like your guys' place or going to Ascension or going to Canton Brew Works. I live in Canton, so I'm really close to all you guys, and that's one thing that I noticed too is that over time you start seeing more differing clientele come in, and I that kind of leads me to my next question. As far as Northville's concerned and North Center, do you guys see that your particular clientele is looking for particular styles? Is it like across the board? Is there any specific thing that you feel like people in Northville are really looking for? Or is it just kind of the same thing everybody else is looking for, the popular things that people are looking for these days?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have I would say, a unique scenario in that regards. Of course, your hazy juice bombs, those are going to be popular just about anywhere. Um, what is gaining traction for us in Northville, which kind of took me off guard. Northville's got a little bit older demographic. We'll call it 40 to 50, as opposed to 30 to 40, which is the more common brewery age. Um, Sours are really becoming popular, and when I say sours, I'm definitely referencing kettle sours. Those are pretty much the only things that we can do in house safely in regards to the other beer. Um, so milder sours, but definitely, that those have become extremely popular. But because we have a slightly older demographic, and I'm not saying that rudely, all you Northvillians out there, you know, they do still enjoy a solid lager. So we really have to come with a good mixed board, which I don't find that to be uncommon in just about any brewery nowadays. But we do have to make sure that we got, um, our standbys. We have we usually have some type of a lighter lager, well, whether it's a pilsner or a Kolsch on tap, and um, definitely need to have the things that appeal, those older styles that appeal to a different generation. So, um, but I will say in the past, we'll call it 3 years, I've seen the demographic get younger and younger, for us. So where when we first opened, the demographic again was maybe 45 to 55 even. I would say now our core demographic is 30 to 40, and with a lot more 25 to 30 that I'm seeing. I think that has more to do with the fact that our food program has gotten better, but um, the styles that we're seeing are pretty much the same anywhere else, but we really do have to concentrate on having a mixed board, which makes it pretty difficult to hone your craft when you have to have so many styles. But you try our best, and um, it is tough to keep up with the trends while keeping your flagships. That's definitely a trick.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot that lagers in general, when I talk to people, that's one of the things that I've been asking is kind of, you know, what style do you see kind of trending? And it almost always low key and things that I see online, when look at places where brewers talk or people that are, they're over the hazy thing. It's always comes back to, oh, but we have this lager. And another thing that I'm seeing a lot of is fruited sours, and I'm wondering, have you guys done any of the like really heavily fruited sours? Do you have any plans to do that, or is that just something that's not really something on the board for you guys?
Yep, we just did a couple of. Now, just make sure that the heavily fruited seltzers, just to make sure we're not confusing with like the smooge type of products. The heavily fruited sours, we've done a few. We just did a um, cherry, berry, and peach ring sours, in which they basically emulated the candies that you can buy at the gas stations. But tons of puree in them, and um, that's definitely becoming I wouldn't say becoming, and that trend's been here for at least a year or two. The difficult thing about keeping that up is shelf life for sure. When you're putting that much fruit into something, I mean, we've heard plenty of stories where, oh, I kept the 4-pack in my car, and next thing you know, it looked like there was a crime scene on the inside of my car. And those are the things that you need to be concerned about. So for us, anytime we do these heavily fruited sours, they're generally on our pilot system, and they pretty much don't make it past a week of availability in the tap room. So we're cautiously stepping into some of these heavily fruited sours on our larger system, but again, we have to balance longevity of the product, and there's really not a long shelf life on some of these. So, but yeah, we are uh, uh, dabbling is probably the wrong word. We're definitely putting out sour products a lot more frequently than we ever have. And it's just on the scale that we're making them is probably a little bit smaller than I'm yet ready to get into.
Do you find that you guys have a particular philosophy that you like to follow when you do a new beer? Or is it basically, do you have a what's the process that goes into what you decide that you're going to brew next? Like what process is there that goes in and says, "Hey, we're going to, this time we're going to do the lager, we're going to do the fruited sour, we're going to do the hazy IPA," whatever the case may be. Is there a process behind that?
Usually it has to do with I mentioned before, having that board, that mixed board in good shape. That includes not only the styles but the color wheel, all of those types of things. That's what probably goes into the most of, okay, well, what do we have on tap now? uh, Making sure that we don't have beers that are competing against each other. I think that's what probably plays the biggest role in what we make. Like in the, if we're doing okay, we're putting together our next grain order. Here are the beers that we're going to make. It pretty much has to do with what we have on tap and when we think those are going to run out. Um, Again, when you have a small pub, making competing beers, um, can hurt you. We have a unique setup in which we don't have a keg room. We direct draw right from our tanks, and so it can take us 4 or 5 weeks to go through a 7 barrel batch. And if you have two products that are competing against each other, that can draw that timeline out, and you don't want liquid sitting in a tank for too long. Because everything's got a shelf life. So For us, it's just making sure that we keep the lineup pretty a good variety, and so sometimes we do pull things ahead or delay them depending on how that board looks.
You brought up your kitchen a little earlier, and the one question I'm sure that you're probably sick of answering is people asking, but I'll ask it because I haven't asked it yet, at least not to you. Um, this is the new question for you. How hard has the pandemic really hurt your business? And I know with your kitchen, do you think that's helped you move through it a little bit with a little bit more ease, or what do you think has really kind of helped propel you through it?
Government funding, loyal fan base. Those are two things. But what I mean, especially with the kitchen, our kitchen's small and it's we have to manage inventory a lot more closely. We don't have a ton of storage space and things like that. So for us, that was probably the hardest part of the kitchen was keeping food fresh, and knowing how much we need to get on a week to week basis. So we kind of changed the approach during the pandemic, and it was highlighting weekly specials that we could pair with some of the beers that we were releasing and kind of generate interest in that regard. We did a couple virtual beer and food pairings, and really tried to also we morphed our menu into a more take outable menu. So I mean, steak and a baked potato doesn't you have to travel 20 minutes to your house, that thing's done for it. You got to put it in the microwave and it doesn't taste good. So we not that we were ever a surf and turf joint, but getting burgers on the menu, something that travels a lot better. Those were key to making our kitchen a little bit more reliable, and then it really morphing together the whole craft beer versus craft food thing and doing pairings and doing things like that. That was a pretty big key to, I think, what level of success that we had during the pandemic. It was definitely due to the innovation of the team and talking about what are the upcoming recipes. Let's make this next wing sauce with this beer and those kinds of things. So, um, I've had to say this a lot over the past year, especially, but survival breeds innovation, no question. And we were able to come up with different ways to promote products and different ways to get people to purchase things and things like that. Because I mean, we're North Center Brewing. We're not a huge brewery that can sell it on its name alone. We really have to promote ourselves and put some fun ideas out there to keep people's interest, and you have to do it week in, week out. So really have to give kudos to the staff that we've put together, and they just did a really good job of coming up with new ways to make our product sellable.
And with the way that the shutdown's been, and I'm sure that was really hard to kind of keep your stock fresh, to especially food stock to say, okay, we're open, we have this much capacity. Okay, now we're closed. We're not. We can't do that. And I know that with Northville, you guys are in a unique situation. I think to other breweries is even when everything outdoor only seating, and you guys have a limited amount of seating. I don't remember if you actually had your tables out at that time, but with Northville closing out off part of Main Street and Center Street, you know you have your own booth down basically in downtown. So did that help kind of supplement your business to be able to have that? Even I don't know if it was going on during the shutdown, but I know that since then, since it's gotten a little cooler, but the streets still been closed off for people to sit out and eat. When did that situation start, and how much of a help was that?
Yeah. So the city of Northville closed down its streets last June, but it was strictly for the restaurants that were in the area to extend their outdoor dining. Then it was sometime in late November that the city got their social district license approved by the state, which meant you can carry your drinks around in that area. And it was then towards the end of December slash beginning of this year, in which they started inviting folks that didn't have representation in that social district into these stands that were set up throughout the social district. And just as a side note, it's actually a pretty cool story of how these things came about. They were the brainchild of one of the business owners in town. He is from Germany, and he had the vision of these European Christmas villages and things like that, where you have all outdoors, all in the middle of winter, all these stands cooking food, selling drinks. And so they put these stands up, and those stands were actually paid for by other Northville businesses. So basically, they asked for donations from law firms, accounting firms, insurance agencies, and they were able to raise enough money to get these stands together. So it was a really cool story of Northville businesses literally trying to save other Northville businesses. And I will tell you with certainty that definitely during the first month, so January especially, that stand saved my business. Not even a question. We were, a shutdown is going to hurt you no matter how you cut it or how you approach it. But January and February are already tough months for the hospitality industry, even without a pandemic. January was not looking very promising, and then these stands that we were able to participate in these stands, and it pretty much was allowing us to have a pub just down the street. And so it was a huge boost for us. It has definitely died down now that dining has come back into a lot of restaurants. But as soon as the weather gets to that, I mean, we're still hitting the 40s, and as soon as it crests and it remains in the 60s consistently, that downtown area, when they get music going, is going to be a fun place to be. And so we've pretty much put our flag in the ground and said, well, we'll take this spot. And so, even though it's slowed down a little bit, we still want to participate so that in the summertime, when it gets better and vaccines are flowing and people are more out and about, we definitely want to make sure we're part of that downtown scene.
So I know with your particular spot, you don't have a ton of room. Like you said, your kitchen's kind of crammed in there. Do you have plans to expand? Do you have another location that you want to be able to brew more on? Um, is there anything in the works for that? Any kind of future plans on that?
Sure. So we did have a pretty big project that was hours away from being started last year. We were supposed to be moving to the Village Workshop building, which is a building in Northville. It would have increased our square footage by about 4 times, and given us a pretty large brew house. We were supposed to start demo work on March 16th, 2020. I don't know if that day, yeah, I don't know if that day rings a bell for anyone, but when they announced that shutdown, we put a halt immediately, because we just weren't sure at the time. And if it at the time is, it's 2 weeks, and so okay, we can wait 2 weeks before we start knocking walls out. Well, when 2 weeks became a month, and then a month became 2 months, I was quickly approaching when I would have to make a decision about staying in my current location or leaving, because a lot of this was contingent upon my current lease being up and my new one starting. And while I had some time planned and budgeted to be paying rent, 2 rents for multiple months, without knowing when things were going to come back, we were shut down. MLCC wasn't doing audits. The health department wasn't doing audits. Construction was shut off, and we didn't know for how long. And so both myself and my main business partner decided to pull the plug on the project. Because we hadn't done any work yet, officially, at least to the building. The building owners were amicable in the process of exiting. And I mean, it sucked. It was not at our Christmas party last year for our employees, we had it at the new building, and it was, let's check it out. And this is what it's going to look like. We had showed all the blueprints and got the staff all excited. Even my other brewer his first day was March 16th, 2020. He was brought on, we're going to be expanding the brew house, and we're going to need more help. And, so it was a pretty big roller coaster of emotions, but honestly, if we moved forward with the project, we would have run out of money. And, and so there's always a silver lining. And so at the time, it was a tough decision. And it wasn't one that I was excited to make, but it was the right call. And honestly, had we started the project, the original opening date when we started the demolition work was going to be early August. After talking with people after the situation played itself out over several months, we actually found, we probably wouldn't have finished the project even now. So I know for a fact that I would have run out of money. So hindsight's 2020, but when we made the call, there was just too many unknowns. So expansion is always a tricky thing. So first and foremost, let's recoup what we can and what we lost from 2020. But our neighbors right next to us on the first floor of our building are building another site for themselves, and they'll be moving out hopefully towards the end of 2021. At which point there could be a discussion that we could expand in our current building, which would actually save us a ton of money. Moving brewing equipment, it turns out, is really expensive. So honestly, it would be about $100,000 just to move our equipment down the street. So um, saving that expenditure could be a big thing for us to put money towards um, expanding into our current building. I'm not giving anything away because we haven't had enough conversations with the people who own the building, for example, to say that this is a sure thing. But it's definitely something that we're interested in. The city of Northville is also expanding its Riverwalk area, and we've been approached about potentially being a part of that. So it would be actually pretty close to where the Village Workshop building is. But again, let's recover from 2020, and let's before we start talking about expansions. It was we went from expansion mode to survival mode pretty quick last year, so we're gonna recoup from 2020 and then see where 2021 takes us.
Yeah, it's definitely a don't count your chickens kind of situation, you know. But just as an aside, the tap room that you guys have now is really I really love the decor in there. I've had my friend and I, my buddy will, this is a really silly thing, but whenever there was a curling like championship or something, we'd go to your brewery and sit down and have a couple beers, sit in the back, and you know, have a couple beers and watch curling or handball or some
Yeah.
ridiculous sport. And it's just all, if you haven't been there, it's all, the walls have this wood on them. Your sign is kind of like recessed a little bit in the North Center Brewing Company sign on the wall. I think you have a shuffleboard table, right?
Yep.
Shuffleboard.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff in there. It's really cool. And just when I don't live too far away, but when I drive by at night, I'll go to the store across the street, and I'll drive by, and I don't necessarily have time to stop in, but you see the lights and all the people in there and the glow coming out. It's always really inviting, and damn it, I'm always jealous that I can't stop in and be like, just one beer, because for me, it's never just one beer. It's like,
not possible.
turns into like two or three, and then you get yourself into trouble when you get home. So,
Absolutely.
where were you about the whole time? So what is your right now? I know that you sell cans out of the tap room. Do you have any kind of distribution or self-distribution, or is it, and I know you have delivery too, but is it, if people want to buy your beer now to take home, do they have to come to the tap room or have it delivered, or other stores that we could go to and pick up your beer now?
Sure. Yeah, there is a side note to that story. So we were with a distributor, and the first shutdown of 2020, our distributor decided to close its doors. We had worked with a small distributor, but them closing meant that our contract was void. And so we decided, when things started to pick back up in late summer, early fall, we were going to try the self-distribution route, especially because of the laws relaxing in that regard. And I actually hired a rep. His first day, was the day of shutdown number 2. So apparently, if you get hired full time at NCB, it means that we're about to be closed for 3 months. So, but we actually the timing worked out in the sense of getting into a lot of party stores. So one thing we did last year, we took the took the opportunity of improving our can and labeling and things like that, and making a more appealing shelf product. And that translated into a lot of sales here locally at party shops. So we actually have a link on our website of where can you find NCB beer. And I mean, we got locations in Livonia, Farmington, Plymouth, Novi, Royal Oak, Ann Arbor, and hoping to get that back on track. The self distribution route, it is always a difficult route, and right now especially, it's been difficult because of as party stores start to realize that their sales are going to decrease because of restaurants reopening, and restaurants have been sitting on months of inventory. No one's really buying a whole heck of a lot right now unless your name is Bell's, Founders, etc., and or you already have an established product. Eastern Market Brewing, for example, has a very strong self distribution program. So places like that will continue to be healthy. Um, so we're getting that back on track, but yeah, you can find some of our product in stores here locally. And now that the restaurants are slowly coming back online, we should see that grow as well to some of the accounts we were working with pre-pandemic. So all of it's a hyper local. We don't have we're not distributed in 38 states or anything like that, but yeah, and the our label guy has really stepped up his game, and our cans look much more appealing on the shelves. We got some good liquid going in. Geez, I almost don't want to admit that I used to be the brewer, because if you compare the beer that we made in 2015 versus the beer we're making now, uh, man, we've grown, we've gotten a lot better, and it took a long time, but I'm confident in saying that you come into the pub right now, you're gonna find that you will enjoy all of the beers, and even if they're styles that you don't like, you'll appreciate how they turned out. So I'm very proud of where our beer is now, and we've stepped up our game during 2020 to make our product more marketable, more sellable, and that's not just with a good marketing plan. You have to have a good product behind it, and so our product has definitely improved, and the whole package, our kitchen's improved, our liquids improved. We have a bigger patio now. I mean, there's so many things that make it a better experience, and so I'm pretty excited to see what 2021 brings as we start to get into the reopening phases. And yeah, I definitely think if people stop in and they want to get some stuff to go, they'll be happy with what they take home for sure.
So what I'm getting from you basically is that the story, kind of going back to the whole pandemic thing, the story of NCB has been, you got to laugh to keep from crying sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, owning a small business is always no picnic, but you throw a global pandemic into it, and it makes you really soul search, and you're either going to find that you really love something or that you don't. And the good thing that came out of everything for us was that we found we're really proud and really love this place, and we really want to see it succeed, and we're going to do everything we can to keep that going. And and what also helped us out, and I do want to take a moment here to give a shout out to some of the other places around us, because they've made us step up our game. The first place that comes to mind is our neighbors just to the north, which is Ascension Brewing. Their canning game is on fire, and I do want to Adam and Chow and Brandon. They've put together a a mighty product coming out of their small location too. They don't have enough tanks. Um, Liberty Street has always been somewhere where you look at someone with a good variety board, and just the styles that they come out with. Joe Walters has been like a legend in the game, and he continues to be someone I can bounce ideas off of. Um, and even drafting table, Rez up there, and talking with Mark too. They put together a really strong product, and I mean, we just have some really strong breweries around us, and you can't slow down because you're going to get passed right by. And I think that has also helped us step up our game too, because we don't want to be the brewery that no one talks about when they talk about the 6 or 7 breweries in our immediate area. And and a couple of years ago, we were that brewery that got left out of a lot of conversations, and so now that we've had to take some time to rebuild what we've been doing and some of the things that we're putting out there, I think we're finally ready to get our spot back at the table, so to speak. And yeah, I'm just again, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to do festivals again. They just canceled the spring festival, but I really do think that 2021 is going to be an exciting year for all the breweries in our area, and for us, just really projecting all of the stuff we improved during the pandemic is going to be exciting to see how it's received.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation of, I don't know the actual saying, but a higher tide raises all boats, right? So,
Yep.
if everybody around you does better, it makes you feel, it's not, it's almost like an obligation, but you have to up your game to stay
Mhm.
competitive with everybody else. So kind of final question, we're recording this on the eve of St. Patrick's Day, just to kind of get that out there, and people listening probably won't hear this until after St. Patrick's Day, unfortunately. But what other events do you have coming up? Do you have? I know you said Saturday you have the brewing, the women's brewing
Mhm.
meeting. But do you have any other either special beer releases or
Sure.
special events that you guys are hosting that you'd like to kind of get out there?
Yeah, well, I painted my walls green just for this event, just because of St. Patrick's Day. So no, yeah. So St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow. So like you said, people already have enjoyed their day. We got special things for that. We have the women's brewing class coming up. Our 6 year anniversary is in April, and so we will be doing an event for that. We do release our birthday smash, which is a single malt, single hop ale. Um, and that's usually a big one for us. We'll have food specials, and we usually set up a secondary bar outside, and just make a big party out of it. We will be taking advantage of the aforementioned stands in downtown Northville, so I strongly encourage people to check out the social district in Northville. It's called the Twist. Very very eclectic, and it is a really cool experience. Especially they're going to have music on Friday and Saturday nights in various spaces in and around the social district. So I think that's definitely worth coming out and checking out. And a lot of great restaurants in that spot too, restaurants and bars. And so, not just what is North Center going to be a part of, but Northville itself has got a lot going on. So yeah, as we get into the summer, it's if we with most of the festivals, we'd be entering festival season about now, and with that pretty much not happening, we got to focus on other events and things like that. So definitely look for NCB, not only at the pub, but in that social district too. We got trivia coming back, live music going on. So our website's usually up to date with all that stuff. So yeah, give that a shout to uh, you know northcenterbrewing.com. That'll be where you'll see all the stuff that we got upcoming, and yeah, a lot of things. Just excited to get back to normalcy or whatever it's going to be now.
Right, get the ball rolling a little bit.
Yeah,
So go ahead and shout out your social media. Where can we find you on the
sure.
Twitter, on the Instagrams, and the et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. Our main social media outlets are Instagram, North Center Brewing, and Facebook, which is also North Center Brewing. We are on Twitter, but it's pretty much just a copy and paste from whatever goes in Instagram. Our website is northcenterbrewing.com. That has our menus and hours and stuff like that, all of our online ordering platforms and everything like that. So all different kinds of ways you can enjoy an NCB beer if you aren't quite comfortable coming into the pub yet. So, yeah, plenty of places to find us.
And then if we go on TikTok at North Center Brewing, we can see your dances and stuff, right?
It'll just be my karaoke songs, all whole catalog.
Oh, you're wrapping it back up. That's what I like. You're bringing it back to the beginning. All right. Well, we got Kevin DeGrood from North Center Brewing Company. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. I know, we had some technical difficulties at first, but I appreciate you sticking through and hanging in there.
Well, no, I appreciate you sticking with me. I would have probably hung up on myself if I were you. But I do appreciate it. And anytime, you've always been a good defender of the Michigan beer industry, and appreciate being on the show.
All right. And with that, Sean signing off. Remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries, just like Kevin just said. And most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself a little draft therapy. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. I want to give a big thanks and a huge shout out to Kevin DeGrood over at North Center Brewing Company for his time and for coming on the podcast. If you'd like to support Draft Therapy, become an executive producer, or maybe just buy me a beer, take a look at my Patreon at patreon.com/draft_therapy, where you can find out more on how to support the channel. So until next time, again, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Peace, everybody.